Nobody ever looked at me twice. I was invisible in the way only poor kids know how to be. The kind of invisible where you exist, but people's eyes just slide right past you like you're part of the furniture. I wore the same rotation of 3 outfits every single week because that's all we had. My sneakers had duct tape holding the soles together. My backpack was from a thrift store and had someone else's name scratched out on the tag. But none of that bothered me as much as you might think. I had learned early that when you don't have much, you stop measuring your worth by what's in your closet. You find other ways to matter, or at least you try to. Before we continue, if stories like this inspire you, subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss the next ones. I was 7 years old when Emma moved into our neighborhood, 3 houses down from mine in a duplex that looked like it might fall apart if you leaned on it too hard. She came to live with her grandmother after her parents died in a car accident. I didn't know any of that the first day I saw her. All I knew was that she walked into Mrs. Henderson's 2nd grade classroom, wearing a shirt that was at least 3 sizes too big, and pants that had been hemmed with what looked like Scotch tape. Her hair was cut in this choppy, uneven way that screamed someone did this at home with kitchen scissors. And when she stood at the front of the class to introduce herself, her hands were shaking so badly I could see it from my desk in the back row. The other kids didn't even try to hide their reactions. I watched Jenny Murphy lean over to whisper something to her best friend Katie. Both of them giggled behind their hands. I watched Marcus Chun look Emma up and down, and then deliberately turn away like she wasn't worth his attention. I watched 23 7-year-olds make a collective decision in about 30 seconds. This girl wasn't worth knowing. This girl was someone to avoid. But I saw something else. I saw the way Emma's eyes got watery when the giggles started. I saw how she looked down at her taped pants like she was seeing them for the first time and hating what she saw. I saw her lips trembling as she tried to smile through Mrs. Henderson's welcome speech. And I recognized every single thing she was feeling because I had felt it 100 times before. At lunch that day, I made a choice. Emma sat alone at a table in the corner of the cafeteria, unpacking a sandwich that looked like it had been made with the cheapest bread and the thinnest layer of peanut butter I'd ever seen. She was trying to make herself as small as possible, hunched over her food like she didn't want anyone to notice she existed. Every other kid in that cafeteria had somewhere to sit, someone to sit with. Emma had nobody. I picked up my brown paper bag and walked straight to her table. I didn't think about it. I didn't plan what I was going to say. I just sat down across from her and watched her eyes go wide with surprise and something that looked like fear, like she thought I was there to make fun of her too. "Hey," I said. "I'm Sarah. You want half of my sandwich?" Emma stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. Then slowly, carefully, like she thought this might be some kind of trick, she nodded. I split my peanut butter and jelly sandwich down the middle and handed her half. We ate in silence for a few minutes. And then Emma said something so quietly I almost didn't hear it. "Thank you." Those 2 words changed everything. We became friends. Just like that. No drama. No big declarations. Just 2 kids who understood what it felt like to be on the outside, deciding to be on the outside together. And somehow, that made the outside not feel so lonely anymore. For the next 3 years, Emma and I were inseparable. We walked to school together every morning, both of us wearing our second-hand clothes and carrying our cheap backpacks, and we didn't care what anyone thought. We shared our lunches because neither of us ever had quite enough. We did our homework sitting on my front porch steps because Emma's grandmother worked night shifts and my mom worked 2 jobs during the day. We created entire worlds with nothing but sticks and rocks and imagination. We didn't need the things other kids had. We had something better. We had each other. But 4th grade is when everything changed. That's when Madison Porter noticed us, really noticed us. And that's when our quiet, invisible existence became something much worse. Madison was everything Emma and I weren't. She lived in one of the big houses on Oak Street, the kind with the perfect lawn and the 2-car garage and the swing set in the backyard that probably cost more than my mom made in a month. She wore a different outfit every single day, always something with a brand name that the other girls would notice and compliment. Her hair was always perfect, pulled back in these elaborate braids that her mom probably spent an hour on every morning. She was smart and confident, and had that kind of natural charisma that made other kids want to follow her around like puppies. Madison wasn't mean at first. She just didn't notice us. Emma and I existed in a category of kids that Madison's world didn't acknowledge. We were the free lunch kids, the ones who never had money for field trips, the ones who wore the same clothes over and over. To Madison and her friends, we were basically invisible. Until the jacket. It was October, about 6 weeks into 4th grade. The weather had turned cold fast the way it does sometimes, going from warm September afternoons to freezing October mornings in the span of a week. Emma had been wearing the same thin hoodie for days, and I could tell she was cold. I'd see her shivering during morning recess, hugging herself and trying to pretend she was fine. Her grandmother was sick a lot by then, missing work, and Emma never asked for anything because she knew they didn't have money to spare. Then one day, Emma showed up to school wearing a new jacket. Well, new to her. It was purple with these little flowers embroidered on the collar. Definitely from a thrift store, probably from the 1990s based on the style. But it was warm and it fit her, and Emma was so proud of it. She told me before school started that her grandmother had been saving up for 2 weeks to buy it for her, that she'd seen Emma shivering and had gone to the Goodwill on her day off to find something warm. Emma's eyes were shining when she told me the story. She kept touching the flowers on the collar like they were precious. We were standing by the swings during morning recess when Madison noticed the jacket. I saw her eyes land on Emma and then narrow slightly, like she was calculating something. She walked over with her 2 best friends, Brittany Walsh and Chloe Anderson, trailing behind her the way they always did. The 3 of them moved through the playground like they owned it, and in a lot of ways, they did. "Nice jacket, Emma," Madison said. Her voice had this fake sweetness to it that made my stomach clench. "Where'd you get it?" "The dumpster behind Goodwill." Brittany and Chloe erupted into laughter like Madison had just told the funniest joke in the world. Other kids started drifting over, sensing drama the way kids always do. Emma's face went bright red. She looked down at her jacket, at the flowers she'd been so proud of just an hour ago, and I watched something die in her eyes. My hands clenched into fists. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Madison was still laughing, pointing at the flowers like they were the most ridiculous thing she'd ever seen. Brittany made some comment about how even her dog wouldn't wear something that ugly. Chloe asked if Emma had checked for lice before putting it on. The circle of kids around us was getting bigger, and Emma just stood there frozen, tears starting to well up in her eyes. Something inside me snapped. I stepped in front of Emma, putting myself between her and Madison. I wasn't taller than Madison. I wasn't stronger. I definitely wasn't more popular. But I was angry, really, really angry. The kind of angry that makes you shake and feel hot all over, and not care about consequences. "You need to stop," I said. My voice came out shakier than I wanted, but I kept going. "Stop it right now." Madison looked at me like I was an insect she wanted to squash. Her perfectly shaped eyebrows went up in this expression of fake surprise. "Oh look," she said, turning to Brittany and Chloe. "The charity case is defending the charity case. How adorable." More laughter. The circle of kids was getting even bigger now. I could feel Emma behind me, trembling. I could hear her trying not to cry. And I knew I had to say something. Something that would make them understand. Something that would make this stop. "You think you're better than us because you have nice clothes," I said. My voice was getting stronger now, louder. "You think having money makes you special. Emma is worth 10 of you. She's kind and she's smart, and she doesn't need to hurt other people to feel good about herself." Madison's smile flickered for just a second, but then it came back, harder and meaner than before. "Whatever," she said. "You're both losers. Nobody wants to be friends with poor people anyway." That's when the words came out. I didn't plan them. They just erupted from somewhere deep inside me, from a place that knew something true and important and couldn't keep it quiet anymore. "Friendship is more important than appearance," I said, and I said it loud enough for everyone to hear. "Emma is my best friend because of who she is, not what she wears. And if you can't see that, if you think clothes and money are what makes someone worth knowing, then you're the one missing out, not us." The playground went completely silent. Madison stood there with her mouth slightly open, like she couldn't believe someone had actually talked back to her. Brittany and Chloe looked at each other, confused about what they were supposed to do without Madison's lead, and all the other kids just stared. Then Emma did something that made my throat tight, and my eyes sting. She reached out and grabbed my hand. She squeezed it hard, and when I looked back at her, she wasn't crying anymore. She was standing up straight. She was looking Madison right in the eye. "She's right," Emma said. Her voice was quiet, but every single person heard it. "You can laugh at my clothes all you want, but I have a real friend, and that's worth more than anything you'll ever have." Madison's face turned red. She opened her mouth like she was going to say something cruel, something cutting that would put us back in our place. But nothing came out. For maybe the first time in her entire life, Madison Porter didn't have a comeback. She just turned around and walked away, with Brittany and Chloe scrambling to follow her. The circle of kids slowly broke up. The drama was over. Everyone went back to playing and talking and being 10 years old. But Emma and I just stood there, still holding hands, both of us shaking from adrenaline and fear, and something else I couldn't quite name. "Thank you," Emma whispered. "Nobody's ever done that for me before." I squeezed her hand tighter. "That's what friends do," I said. "We protect each other." If this story has moved you so far, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, because there are other real and emotional stories you can't miss. I thought that would be the end of it. I really did. Madison would move on to some other target. She'd forget about us and we'd go back to being invisible. But I was wrong, so incredibly wrong. Things got worse. Way worse. Madison didn't give up after that day on the playground. If anything, our confrontation made her more determined. She started a campaign against us that was so calculated and cruel, it still makes me angry to think about it years later. She spread rumors, horrible ones. She told people Emma had lice, that she smelled bad, that her grandmother was crazy, that I was only friends with Emma because nobody else would be friends with me. She convinced half the 4th grade to exclude us from everything. If we tried to join a game at recess, suddenly the game was full. If we sat at a lunch table, other kids would pick up their trays and move. We became invisible again, but this time it was worse because it wasn't passive. It was active rejection. It was deliberate. Emma started getting stomachaches every morning before school. She'd cry and beg her grandmother to let her stay home. Her grandmother called my mom, worried sick because Emma was having nightmares and wetting the bed again, something she hadn't done since her parents died. My mom sat me down one night and asked if maybe I should try making friends with some other kids. Kids who wouldn't make my life so hard. Kids who wouldn't drag me down with them. But I couldn't do that. I wouldn't, because I knew what it felt like to be abandoned. I knew what it felt like when nobody stood up for you. And I had meant what I said on that playground. Friendship was more important than appearance, more important than popularity, more important than having an easy life. The worst day came right before Thanksgiving break. Madison convinced practically our entire grade to participate in what she called a social experiment. Everyone was supposed to pretend Emma didn't exist for the entire day. Not talk to her, not look at her, not acknowledge her presence in any way. And because Madison had that kind of power, because she was Madison, most kids went along with it. That morning, Emma walked into our classroom and tried to say good morning to a girl named Sarah Chen, who she thought was nice. Sarah looked right through her like she was made of glass. Emma tried again with another kid. Same thing. By the time she got to her desk, her whole body was trembling like she might fall apart. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up in the middle of class before our teacher, Mrs. Patterson, even arrived, and I did something I'd never done before. I yelled. Actually yelled in a classroom where raising your voice was practically a crime. "What is wrong with you?" My voice cracked, but I kept going. "Why are you letting Madison control you like this? Emma is sitting right here. She's a real person. She exists. And you're all pretending she doesn't because one mean girl told you to." The classroom went dead silent. 24 pairs of eyes stared at me. Some kids looked ashamed. Others looked angry that I'd called them out. A few looked confused, like they were just now realizing what they'd been doing. But before anyone could say anything, before anyone could respond, Emma started crying. Not quiet tears. Real gut-wrenching sobs that shook her whole body and made her desk rattle. I didn't think. I just moved. I ran to her desk and wrapped my arms around her and let her cry into my shoulder right there in front of everyone. And I didn't care. I didn't care who was watching, or what they thought, or how this would make things harder for us later. My friend was breaking apart and nothing else mattered. That's when Mrs. Patterson walked in. She took one look at the scene, at Emma sobbing in my arms, at the guilty faces around the room, and her expression went from confused to furious in about 2 seconds flat. She told everyone to sit down immediately. She told Emma and me to come to her desk. And then in front of the entire class she asked us what was happening. I told her everything, every single detail. The jacket incident, the rumors, the systematic exclusion, the plan to ignore Emma for an entire day. Emma was crying too hard to speak, so I became her voice. I was shaking with anger and fear, but I didn't stop talking until I'd said everything that needed saying. Mrs. Patterson's face got harder with every word. When I finished, she called Madison, Brittany, and Chloe to the front of the room. She called the principal. Right there in the middle of our school day, she made phone calls and held meetings, and we could all hear pieces of it through the walls. Raised voices, serious tones, the kind of trouble that made even the kids who hadn't done anything wrong sit up straighter in their chairs. When Madison and her friends came back to class, their faces were blotchy from crying. They weren't smiling anymore. They weren't powerful anymore. They looked small and scared and human. The principal, Mrs. Rodriguez, came into our classroom that afternoon. She was tall with kind eyes and gray hair pulled back in a bun. She stood at the front of our room, and she didn't talk to us like we were little kids who couldn't understand complex things. She talked to us like we were people capable of making real choices. "Something happened in this classroom today that should never happen anywhere," she said. "A student was deliberately hurt by her peers. Many of you participated either actively or by staying silent. I want you to think about how that feels. Close your eyes and imagine being in Emma's position. Imagine everyone pretending you don't exist." She paused. The room was so quiet I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. "But I also want to recognize someone who showed real courage today," Mrs. Rodriguez continued. "Someone who stood up when it would have been easier to stay quiet. Someone who protected her friend even when it meant standing alone." She looked directly at me. My face got hot. I hadn't done it for recognition. I'd just done what felt right. "That's the kind of person we need more of in this world," Mrs. Rodriguez said. "People who choose kindness over popularity. People who understand that friendship is more important than appearance or status or fitting in. That's real strength." Madison had to apologize. Not just to Emma, but to the entire class for what the principal called creating a hostile environment. Her parents were called in for meetings. Brittany and Chloe had to apologize too. And Mrs. Patterson implemented a whole new set of classroom rules about inclusion and respect that she enforced, like a drill sergeant. But the real change came from somewhere unexpected. A girl named Jasmine, who sat in the back and never talked to anyone, walked up to our desk during free time. She was holding a piece of paper. "I made this for you," she said to Emma. It was a drawing of 2 girls holding hands with the words "real friends" written at the top. "I think what you 2 have is really special. And I'm sorry I didn't say anything before. That was wrong of me." Emma looked at the drawing and then at Jasmine. She smiled for the first time all day. "Thank you," Emma said quietly. "That really means a lot." And then something incredible happened. Another kid came over. Then another. By the end of free time, there were 6 kids around our desk apologizing and asking if they could sit with us at lunch. Some of them asked if we wanted to play together at recess. Kids who had ignored us for weeks suddenly wanted to be our friends. Not all of them. Madison and her core group still hated us. Some kids still thought we were weird for being poor. But enough kids changed their minds that Emma and I weren't alone anymore. We had Jasmine. We had Marcus, who it turned out loved drawing as much as Emma did. We had twin sisters Riley and Reagan, who asked if they could walk home with us sometime. Our group of 2 became 6, then 8. Then we stopped counting because it didn't matter. We weren't the popular kids. We'd never be the popular kids. But we had something real, something that wasn't based on clothes or money or status. We had friendships that were built on actually caring about each other. That afternoon when Emma and I walked home together, she stopped suddenly on the sidewalk. She turned to look at me with tears in her eyes, but they were different tears this time. "You could have just ignored me," she said. "That first day when I moved here, you could have done what everyone else did. It would have been easier for you. But you didn't. And today you stood up for me, even though it was scary. Why?" I thought about her question. I thought about all the times I'd felt invisible and wished someone would see me. I thought about how much it hurt to be alone. I thought about how friendship, real friendship, was the most valuable thing I'd ever had. "Because that's what friends do," I said. "And because you're worth standing up for. Always." Emma hugged me right there on the sidewalk, and I hugged her back, and I knew that whatever happened next, we'd face it together. The rest of 4th grade was better. Not perfect, but better. Madison left us alone mostly. She still made comments sometimes, still looked at us like we were beneath her, but she didn't organize campaigns against us anymore. Her power had diminished somehow. Kids had seen that she could be challenged, that standing up to her was possible. Emma and I grew closer. We had other friends now, but we were still best friends. The kind of best friends who know everything about each other, who can communicate with just looks, who would do anything for each other without question. 5th grade came and went. 6th grade, middle school. We stayed best friends through all of it. We were there for each other through everything. When my dad left and my mom cried for 3 weeks straight, Emma slept over every single night, even though it meant her grandmother was alone. When Emma's grandmother got diagnosed with cancer in 7th grade, I was the one holding her hand in the hospital waiting. We protected each other, always, the way we'd started, the way we'd promised. High school was hard for different reasons. We were still the poor kids, still the ones with secondhand everything. Emma got a job bagging groceries after school to help pay her grandmother's medical bills. I babysat every weekend to help my mom with rent. We didn't go to parties. We didn't have time for football games or dances. We were too busy surviving. But we had each other. And we had our group of friends who'd stuck with us since 4th grade. Kids who understood that friendship meant more than any of the superficial stuff that seemed so important to everyone else. Junior year, something happened that changed everything. Our guidance counselor called Emma and me into her office on the same day. She told us about a scholarship, a big one, full ride to any state university plus money for books and living expenses. It was specifically for students who demonstrated exceptional character and community service, despite financial hardship. "You both need to apply," Mrs. Chun said. "I'm not supposed to say this, but you're both exactly what they're looking for." Emma and I worked on our applications for weeks. We wrote essays about our lives, our struggles, what we'd learned, and we both wrote about each other, about what friendship meant when you had nothing else, about how protecting someone, standing up for someone, was the most important thing a person could do. We wrote about the jacket, about the playground, about the moment everything changed. The day the scholarship winner was announced, Emma and I sat in Mrs. Chun's office holding hands the same way we'd held hands on that playground 7 years earlier. We'd promised each other that whoever won, we'd be happy for them. And we meant it. Mrs. Chun opened the envelope. She looked up at us with tears in her eyes. "This year they decided to award 2 scholarships instead of 1, she said. "They said the applications from the school were so remarkable, so deeply moving, that they couldn't choose just one person." Emma squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. "The recipients are Emma Richardson and Sarah Mitchell. We both won. We both got full rides to college. We both got the chance to build lives beyond what we'd grown up with." And when I read the letter from the scholarship committee later, they specifically mentioned our essays about friendship and loyalty as the reason they'd been so moved. That moment on the playground when I was 10 years old had rippled forward in ways I never could have imagined. It had become part of our story, part of who we were, and somehow it had changed our entire futures. Graduation day came. Madison gave the valedictorian speech. Perfect grades, perfect college plans, perfect everything on paper. She stood at that podium and talked about achievement and success, and reaching for your dreams. It was fine, well written, polished, but when she finished and sat down, nobody really felt anything. It was just words. Then Emma gave a speech, not as valedictorian but as the scholarship recipient. She walked up to that podium in a dress her grandmother had sewn by hand. She looked out at all of us and she told our story. The jacket, the bullying, the moment I'd stood up for her, how one person's courage had changed her entire life. She talked about how that moment had taught her that your worth isn't determined by what you have or how you look. It's determined by how you treat people, by whether you have the courage to do what's right, even when it's hard. By the time Emma finished, half the auditorium was crying, including Madison. I saw her 3 rows ahead of me with tears streaming down her face. Not tears of self-pity, tears of understanding, of regret, of finally seeing what she'd almost destroyed. After the ceremony, Madison came up to us. She stood there awkwardly while Emma and I took pictures with our families. My mom and Emma's grandmother standing together with their arms around each other, both crying and laughing. "I know I apologized years ago," Madison said quietly, "but I don't think I really meant it then. I was just doing what I was told to do. But I want to say it now, and I want to mean it. I'm sorry for all of it. You were right that day on the playground. Friendship is more important than appearance. And I wasted so many years not understanding that." Emma looked at her for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Thank you," Emma said. "That really means a lot." Madison nodded and walked away. She didn't ask to be friends. She didn't make excuses. She just acknowledged what had happened. And somehow that felt right. That summer before college, Emma and I spent one last afternoon on my front porch like we'd done when we were 7. We talked about everything. Where we'd been, where we were going, all the moments that had led us here. "Do you ever think about that day?" Emma asked. "The jacket day?" "All the time," I said. "It was the day I learned what I was capable of." Emma smiled. "It was the day I learned I wasn't alone." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over our neighborhood, the same neighborhood that had felt too small for so long. But sitting there with my best friend, I realized it had been exactly what we needed. College changed everything and nothing at the same time. Emma and I went to the same state university and roomed together freshman year. We made new friends, had new experiences, grew in ways we never imagined possible. But we never forgot where we came from. We never forgot that moment on the playground that had defined so much of who we became. During sophomore year, Emma started something that would change hundreds of lives. She created a support group on campus for students from low-income backgrounds. A place where people who felt invisible, who felt like they didn't belong in college, could come and be seen. Really seen. The program grew so fast the university officially recognized it and gave Emma funding to expand. I started volunteering at a local elementary school, working with kids who reminded me of us. Kids with worn-out shoes and second-hand clothes and eyes that looked down when someone spoke to them. I tried to be for them what I'd tried to be for Emma. Someone who saw them. Someone who stood up. One day I was working with a little girl named Destiny, 8 years old and so quiet I could barely hear her voice. She'd been bullied for weeks by girls in her class. Her teacher asked me to help her build confidence. We were drawing pictures together when Destiny suddenly said, "I wish I had a friend like you." I looked at her confused. "What do you mean?" She explained that her teacher had told her my story, about standing up for my friend when we were her age, about how that friendship had lasted and changed both our lives. "You do have a friend like that," I told Destiny. "You just haven't met her yet, that she's out there. And when you meet her, you'll recognize her because she'd be the one who sees you when everyone else looks away." Destiny thought about that. Then she asked something that broke my heart. "What if nobody sees me?" I took her small hand in mine. "Then you be the one who sees someone else. You be the friend you're looking for. Because that's how it works. We can't always control how people treat us, but we can control how we treat people. And sometimes being the friend you wish you had is the most powerful thing you can do." Destiny looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "Can you teach me how?" And I did. For the rest of that school year, I worked with Destiny every week. I taught her what Emma had taught me. That your worth doesn't come from what you wear or what you have. It comes from how you show up for people, how you protect them, how you choose kindness even when cruelty seems easier. By the end of the year, Destiny had made 3 close friends. Girls who had also felt invisible. Girls who found each other because Destiny had been brave enough to reach out first. And watching them together, watching them create the same kind of bond Emma and I had, I realized something profound. That moment on the playground hadn't just changed Emma's life and mine. It had started a ripple effect that kept spreading. Because I'd stood up for Emma, she'd learned her worth. Because Emma learned her worth, she created a program to help others learn theirs. Because I'd seen the power of protection and friendship, I'd taught destiny, and destiny would teach someone else. On and on, rippling forward in ways we'd never fully see. Emma graduated with honors. She got a job working with at-risk youth in our hometown. She went back to the same neighborhood we grew up in and became the person she needed when she was young. The advocate, the protector, the one who stood up. I became a teacher. 4th grade, the same grade Emma and I had been in during the jacket incident. And every year when I see kids starting to form cliques, when I see the popular ones and the outcasts emerging, I tell them a story about 2 girls who had nothing but each other, about a purple jacket with flowers, about the moment one girl chose to stand up instead of stay silent. And every year I see something change in my students' eyes. Not all of them. Some kids are too set in their ways, too influenced by parents who taught them that status matters more than substance. But some of them get it. Some of them start looking around for the quiet kids, the invisible ones, the Emmas of their class, and they sit with them. They talk to them. They see them. Last year, a girl in my class named Sophia came to me after I told that story. She said, "Miss Mitchell, I want to be like you were. There's a boy in our class that everyone ignores. Can you help me figure out how to be his friend?" I smiled, thinking about 10-year-old me, scared but determined on that playground. "You don't need my help," I told Sophia. "You already know what to do. Just see him, talk to him, stand next to him when others walk away. That's all it takes. One person who cares enough to try." Sophia nodded. The next day I watched her sit with that boy at lunch. I watched her include him in games at recess. I watched other kids start to follow her example because courage, real courage, is contagious. Emma and I are 32 now. We still live in the same town we grew up in. We still have dinner together every Sunday. We still celebrate each other's victories and support each other through struggles. And we still talk about that day on the playground like it was yesterday. People ask us sometimes why we stayed in our hometown, why we didn't move to bigger cities with more opportunities. The answer is simple. This is where we're needed. This is where kids like we were still exist. Kids who need someone to see them, someone to stand up for them, someone to teach them that friendship is more important than appearance, that loyalty matters more than popularity, that one moment of courage can change everything. Last month, Emma and I were invited back to our old elementary school. They wanted us to speak at an assembly about bullying prevention. We stood in that same gymnasium where we'd sat as kids, where we'd never imagined we'd be the ones at the front. We told our story. The real story, not sanitized. We talked about the hurt and the fear and the loneliness. We talked about the purple jacket and the tears and the moment everything changed. And we talked about what came after. The ripples, the impact. The lives changed because one kid decided to stand up. When we finished, the principal opened the floor for questions. A little girl in the front row, couldn't have been more than 7, raised her hand. "What if you're scared?" she asked. "What if you want to stand up for someone, but you're too afraid?" Emma and I looked at each other. I nodded for her to take it. Emma crouched down to be at eye level with the little girl. "Being scared doesn't mean you're weak," she said gently. I was scared that day. Sarah was scared too, but she did it anyway. That's what courage is. It's not the absence of fear. It's acting despite the fear. And you know what? The fear gets smaller every time you're brave. It doesn't go away completely, but it gets smaller. The little girl nodded slowly. Then she said something that made both Emma and me tear up. "I'm going to be brave tomorrow. There's a girl in my class who eats lunch alone. I'm going to sit with her." Emma smiled. "That girl is very lucky. She doesn't know it yet, but her whole life is about to change. Because of you." After the assembly, we stayed and talked to kids for another hour. So many of them had stories. Kids being bullied. Kids who had been bullies and wanted to change. Kids who felt invisible and just wanted someone to see them. We listened to every single one. We gave advice where we could, but mostly we just let them know they weren't alone. As we were leaving, an older teacher stopped us. She was close to retirement with grey hair and kind wrinkles around her eyes. "I was here 22 years ago," she said. "I was a student teacher in Mrs. Patterson's class. I was there the day you stood up for Emma. I was there when you said friendship was more important than appearance. And I want you to know that moment changed me too. It changed how I taught, how I handled conflict, how I thought about courage. You were 10 years old and you taught me something I'd never learned in all my education classes. She paused, her eyes getting watery. I've spent my entire career trying to teach my students what you showed that day, that we have a choice, that we can stand up or stay silent, that one person's courage can inspire others. You probably don't remember me. I was just a student teacher in the back of the room, but I remember you, and I want to thank you. I honestly couldn't speak. Neither could Emma. We just hugged that teacher and cried together in the hallway of our old elementary school. Driving home that day, Emma and I were quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stood up that day? If you just stayed quiet like everyone else?" I thought about it, really thought about it. "Yeah," I said, "I think about it sometimes, and I don't like what I see. I think I would have lost you, not right away, but eventually, I think the pain would have been too much. I think you would have pulled away to protect yourself, and I would have lost the most important person in my life." Emma reached over and squeezed my hand. "But you didn't stay quiet," she said. "You chose me. When it would have been easier to look away, you chose to see me. And that choice saved my life, literally saved it, because I don't know if I would have made it through those years without you." We drove the rest of the way in silence. The good kind, the kind where everything that needs to be said has already been said. That night, I lay in bed thinking about everything. About the scared 10-year-old I used to be. About the purple jacket and the playground. The moment I chose courage over comfort. About all the years that followed. All the lives touched. All the ripples still spreading. And I realized something profound. That moment didn't just change Emma's life. It didn't just change mine. It changed the trajectory of hundreds of lives. Every kid Emma helped through her program. Every student I taught. Every person those kids would go on to help. On and on, spreading out like a web of connection and courage. One moment, one choice. That's all it took to start everything. People always want to know the secret to making a difference. They want some grand plan or special ability. But the truth is simpler than that. The truth is that sometimes making a difference is as simple as seeing someone when everyone else looks away. As simple as standing next to someone when they're alone. As simple as saying out loud what everyone else is afraid to say. Friendship is more important than appearance. I said those words when I was 10 years old, and they're still true today. Maybe more true. Because in a world that constantly tells us to care about the wrong things, about status and money and image, choosing to care about people instead, about loyalty and kindness and courage, that's revolutionary. That's how you change the world. Not with big dramatic gestures, with small choices made over and over again, with the decision to stand up when you could sit down, to speak up when you could stay quiet, to see someone when you could look away. Emma is my best friend. She has been for 25 years, and she will be for the rest of my life, not because she's perfect, not because our friendship has been easy, but because we chose each other. On that playground when we were kids, I chose her, and every day since then we've kept choosing each other. That's what real friendship is. It's not about who you hang out with when everything is easy. It's about who stands next to you when everything is hard. It's about who sees your worth when everyone else is blind to it. It's about who has the courage to protect you even when protecting you comes at a cost. Last week, Emma called me late at night. She'd just finished a session with a teenage girl who reminded her of herself at that age. A girl being bullied relentlessly. A girl who felt worthless and invisible and alone. I told her our story, Emma said. About the jacket and the playground and what you did for me. And you know what she said? She said she didn't think people like you existed anymore. People who would risk their own comfort to protect someone else. What did you tell her? I asked. Emma's voice got thick with emotion. I told her that people like you exist everywhere. They're just waiting for the right moment, waiting to find their person. And I told her that maybe she could be that person for someone else. That maybe she could be the friend she's looking for. Did it help? Emma was quiet for a moment. She's coming back next week, she said. She wants to learn how to be brave, just like you taught me. And there it was again. The ripples, still spreading, still changing lives. 25 years after that moment on the playground, and it was still making a difference. I think about Destiny sometimes. The little girl I worked with in college. She'd be in high school now. I wonder if she's standing up for someone. If she's being the friend she wished she'd had. I think about Sophia from my class last year. About that boy she befriended. About how his whole world probably changed because one girl decided to see him. I think about all the kids Emma has helped through her program. All the students I've taught over the years. All the conversations and small moments and choices that rippled out from that one day in October when I was 10 years old. And I think about Madison. About how even she changed eventually. How even the bully learned something from what happened. How years later she apologized and meant it. How she understood finally what really mattered. Nobody's beyond change. Nobody's beyond learning. That's something I've learned doing this work. Even the Madisons of the world can grow, can realize their mistakes, can become better. But it usually takes someone standing up first. Someone saying, no, this is wrong. Someone choosing courage over comfort. Emma and I are planning something new, a non-profit organization that brings our work together. Her experience with at-risk youth and my experience teaching. We want to create programs in schools that teach kids what we learned on that playground. That friendship is more important than appearance. That courage matters. That one person can make a difference. We're calling it the Purple Jacket Project, in honor of the jacket that started everything. The jacket that Emma's grandmother saved for 2 weeks to buy. The jacket that Madison mocked. The jacket that became a symbol of something much bigger than any of us realized at the time. We're launching it next year. We've been working on it for months, writing curriculum and getting funding and planning how to reach as many kids as possible. Because if our story can change even one child's life the way that day on the playground changed ours, it'll be worth it. Emma's grandmother passed away last year. She was 92 and had been sick for a long time. At the funeral, Emma gave a eulogy that made everyone cry. She talked about the purple jacket, about how her grandmother had sacrificed to buy it, about how that jacket had led to a moment that changed everything. My grandmother taught me that love is shown through action, Emma said. She didn't have money to give me. She didn't have much of anything, but she gave me that jacket because she saw me shivering, and she couldn't stand to see me cold. That's love. And Sarah showed me the same kind of love when she stood up for me on that playground. She didn't have to. It would have been easier not to, but she did it anyway. That's love too. Emma looked at me in the audience, and I want everyone here to know that the best way to honor my grandmother's memory is to show that same kind of love to others, to see people who are invisible, to stand up when it's hard, to choose kindness over comfort. That's her legacy. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure it continues. I'm crying just thinking about it now. About Emma's grandmother and the purple jacket and the chain of events that followed. About how one small act of love led to another, which led to another. About how we're all connected in ways we don't even realize. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and comment below about which part moved you the most. And before you go, there's a recommended video right next to this one that will give you chills. Watch it now. Have you ever misjudged someone and later discovered you were wrong? Have you ever been the one who stood up when everyone else stayed silent? Or have you been the one who needed someone to stand up for you? Tell me your story in the comments. Because these stories matter. These moments matter. And somewhere out there someone needs to hear that they're not alone. That their moment is coming. That their person is out there ready to see them. Because we all have a choice. Every single day. To be Madison or to be Sarah, to tear down or to build up, to look away or to really see. And the choice we make, that simple choice, it ripples forward in ways we'll never fully understand. It changes lives. It changes the world. So choose courage, choose kindness, choose to see people, and teach the people around you, especially the young ones, to do the same. Because friendship really is more important than appearance. And that truth, that simple truth spoken by a scared 10-year-old on a playground 25 years ago, has the power to change everything. I'm Sarah Mitchell. Emma Richardson is my best friend, and I stood up for her when we were 10 years old. That's the most important thing I've ever done in my life. Not the degrees I earned, not the career I built, not any of the accomplishments that look good on paper. The most important thing I ever did was choose to see someone when everyone else looked away. And you can do that too. Today, right now, there's someone in your life who needs to be seen. Someone who needs a friend. Someone who needs someone to stand up for them. You can be that person. You can make that choice. It won't be easy. It might make your life harder. People might judge you for it. But I promise you, I absolutely promise you, it will be worth it. Because 25 years from now, you'll look back on that moment and realize it was the moment everything changed. The moment you became who you were meant to be. So be brave, be kind, choose friendship over appearance, and watch as that choice ripples forward and changes the world.